Hey, welcome back. Tonight we're going to ease our way into a quiet little disaster that somehow built an empire. It starts with your name on a list, a knock at the door, and a short conversation that ends with you losing all of your freedom and most of your furniture. You didn't ask for this. You didn't wake up this morning thinking you'd be given a spear and told to go conquer a chunk of Germania or spend the next 20 years sleeping in a ditch in Spain. But here we are. Rome has a way of deciding things for you, and once it has, your only real job is to survive long enough to maybe get a pension and a small piece of swampland when it's all over. Maybe. This isn't a story about glory. Not really. If you're looking for blood-pumping tales of victory and valor and speeches shouted over the roar of the Colosseum crowd, you're not going to find that here. What you'll get instead is dirt under your fingernails, blisters on your heels, and an endlessly repeating routine that starts with marching and ends with sleeping in a tent that smells like 8 men and 1 dead rat. You're not a general, you're not even a centurion, you're just a guy who didn't run fast enough when the recruitment officer showed up. This is going to be a soft, slow unraveling of what life looked like for the average Roman soldier. The men who built the roads, carried the siege ladders, dug the latrines, and died without anyone writing epic poetry about them. And we're going to take our time with it. We're not sprinting through history textbooks or flipping through timelines. We're going to walk one slow, dusty step at a time through the fields and forests and forgotten outposts of a Roman world that was less about glory and more about bureaucracy, discipline, hunger, and rain. So much rain. Before we begin, make sure you're settled. Fluff your pillow. Adjust your blankets. Maybe open the window just enough to let in that cool breeze that feels like a whisper from the Alps. Let your body relax and your thoughts start to drift. I know it's been a long day, that's why we're not rushing. Just close your eyes if you want. You won't need them where we're going. You'll have a helmet anyway. And while you're getting cozy, think about where you are and what time it is. Let me know in the comments. I always love seeing people tuning in from strange corners of the modern world, half asleep, listening to stories from a world that doesn't exist anymore, but somehow still feels familiar. Because even though Rome has fallen and the togas are out of fashion, there's something timeless about being stuck in a system that doesn't care if you're tired, doesn't care if you're scared, doesn't care if you just want to go home. The machine of empire rolls on, and you are now part of the wheels. The curtain rises not on a battlefield, not on a parade, but on you, standing in the doorway of your small, slightly crooked house, still chewing the last bite of bread from breakfast, while a Roman official with a very tidy beard tells you that your name has been chosen. You were drafted. It's not personal. It's not negotiable. It's just happening, the kind of happening that echoes down the centuries in footnotes and broken gravestones and fragments of gear buried under layers of dirt and time. The Roman military didn't need you to be inspired. It needed you to obey. And so you do. You don't know yet how heavy that pack is going to feel after the 3rd day of marching. You don't know how cold it gets in the mountains or how long it takes to learn to hold a shield without your arm going numb. All you know is that you're supposed to show up at the local training ground by tomorrow morning with whatever belongings you can carry on your back and enough food to not immediately die. That's it. That's your life now. And so we begin. Not with fanfare, not with destiny, just with the quiet dread of realizing your life has just been handed over to something vast and impersonal and entirely disinterested in your feelings. You've just been drafted into the Roman army. Good luck with that. You don't remember signing up for this because you didn't. That's not how it worked. There was no recruiter handing out pamphlets with smiling soldiers in gleaming armor, no sign-on bonus, no catchy slogan about honor or citizenship. You were born, you grew up, you maybe farmed or fished or made sandals badly for a living, and then one day, a man with a list arrived in your village. He might have had an escort, maybe a few soldiers for show, just in case anyone decided to argue, which almost no one did because the only thing worse than being taken was being noticed as someone who resisted. That didn't end well. It rarely even ended with a burial. Rome always needed soldiers. The empire was a hungry creature, not for food, though it wanted that too, but for bodies, for men to fill formations, hold lines, build bridges, carry banners, raise forts, and die in the right direction. Wars didn't stop. Borders didn't hold themselves. Provinces didn't stay quiet forever. There was always something stirring at the edge. Parthians or Gauls or a tribe whose name you'd never heard but who were inconveniently not interested in being Roman. And when the legions lost men, and they did frequently, someone had to replace them. That someone was you. If you were a citizen, technically, you had certain rights, but even that didn't help much. During some periods, military service was a duty of citizenship, a kind of civic tax you paid with your years and your knees. And if you weren't a citizen, well, it was worse. You had no vote to lose, no legacy to protect. You were just raw material for the war machine. Rome had a name for soldiers like you, milites gregari, the common troops, the anonymous ones. And that anonymity wasn't poetic, it was literal. Most of you would never be remembered. No statues, no poems. Just a small, worn stone if your family could afford it, if they ever saw your body again, if you didn't die on some road, deep in a forest, bleeding into your armor while your unit kept marching. The official would explain it plainly. You've been selected for military service. That's the phrase they used, adscriptus es. Not quite a punishment, not quite a prize, just a fact. Your name was added to the list, and your life, as far as Rome was concerned, was now government property. You had until sunrise to present yourself at the local post. Pack something if you want. Say goodbye if you can. Don't bother hiding. They'll find you. And the penalty for desertion was, let's say, discouraging. You weren't ready. No one was. There were stories, of course. Everyone knew someone who had gone off to serve. Maybe your cousin had made it back, older, thinner, with a limp, and a way of staring into the distance like he saw things there no one else could. Maybe you'd heard tales of men who'd earned land, gold, even citizenship. But those were rare, and even when they were true, they always left something out. Like how many years it took, how many friends didn't make it, how many nights you'd spend soaked to the bone, shivering next to a fire that wouldn't light. What they don't explain in the stories is the silence of it, the hours of waiting, the weight of everything they make you carry, the dull, aching sameness of one hill after another after another. They don't tell you how you'll start dreaming of the sound of marching feet, how it'll settle in your bones and follow you even when you sleep. They don't tell you that once you're in, you don't really get out. Not all the way. You can finish your term, survive the campaigns, even get your discharge scroll, but part of you stays out there on the road, still in line, still under orders, still waiting for the next command. But none of that is happening yet. Right now, you're still standing in your doorway, trying to understand what just happened. Your mother is crying. Your brother looks away. You try to pretend you're not afraid. You pick up your things, whatever you can carry, whatever you think might help, and you start walking. Because that's what you do now. You walk when they say. You stop when they say. You fight when they say. And if they say nothing at all, you just keep walking anyway. There is no music, No applause, no noble speech, just the sound of your own sandals against the dirt and the distant, steady hum of an empire that will never know your name. There's no warm welcome, no banner, no lineup of friendly officers ready to shake your hand and tell you how proud they are. There's just a field, or a half-built camp, or maybe a dusty training ground that looks like it's been patched together out of old wood and discarded dreams. The air smells like sweat and iron, and something vaguely rotting that you try not to identify. You arrive not as a hero, but as a problem to be processed, a recruit, one more body in the endless cycle of Roman military necessity. You're told where to stand, not kindly. You're barked at in Latin, probably not the Latin you learned if you had any schooling at all, but the coarse, clipped, brutal dialect of soldiers who don't have time to explain things twice. The words come fast, and your understanding comes slow. Most of what you grasp is tone, and the tone says, "Don't move unless I say, don't speak unless I ask, don't even breathe wrong." A man walks by and eyes you up and down like he's trying to guess how long it'll take before you collapse. He's your centurion. You don't know his name yet, but you'll know it soon enough. Everyone does. He's the one with the vine staff, a long, thin rod used not just for pointing or directing or looking important, but for hitting. He carries it like someone who enjoys the weight of it. The vine staff doesn't discriminate. You will see it touch faces, backs, thighs, and occasionally heads. It's not ceremonial, it's tradition, and it hurts. They don't ask your name, they give you a number. You are placed in a unit, probably a contubernium, a group of 8 men who will share a tent, share chores, share punishments, and occasionally share lice. This is your new family. You are shoved into a line, you are handed gear, not all at once, in awkward pieces like a cruel puzzle, a helmet that doesn't fit, a belt that pinches, a tunic that rides up when you walk, and a pair of sandals with soles made from optimism and animal hide. You're also given your sarcina, your marching pack. It contains all the things Rome thinks a soldier needs: a cloak, a dish, some tools, maybe a water skin if you're lucky, and a shovel because you will be digging. A lot. Then comes the weapon. A short sword, the gladius. It's not elegant. It's not even sharp, not yet. It's compact, brutal, designed for stabbing, not slashing. You try to hold it like the statues do, but it feels awkward and heavy in your hand. You're also given a wooden training sword, which you'll be using far more than the real thing for now, and a scutum, a shield taller than half your body, curved, heavy, painted red, if your legion still cares about appearances. You'll be told to hold it, then march with it, then fight with it. It's going to hit you in the face at least once before the week is over. Training begins immediately. There's no rest. There's no let's ease into this. You're expected to keep up or fall behind. And if you fall behind, the staff is there to remind you of your choices. You will learn to march in step, not for aesthetics, for survival. In battle, if the line breaks, you all die. So you learn the rhythm: left, right, left, right. Shield steady, eyes forward, no talking, no questions, just motion. You are also taught to build things. Rome is less interested in soldiers who can fight and more interested in soldiers who can build camps, forts, walls, roads, siege engines, traps, pits, barricades. Your hands will become as calloused from hammering and digging as they are from sword drills. Every night, you'll stop marching and start building. Every night, no matter how tired you are, you'll construct a fortified camp, dig a ditch around it, raise a wall, place sentries, and then, maybe, sleep for a few hours on a mat that's already damp with someone else's dreams. Food is basic. You get your frumentum, your grain allowance. It comes raw. You grind it yourself with a hand mill, mix it with water, and cook it into something that resembles sadness more than bread. You eat with your fingers, or with a wooden spoon if you were clever enough to bring one. Meat is rare, salt is precious, and anything with flavor is a memory. Wine is served, but always watered down. Real wine is for officers. You are not an officer. Sanitation is, at best, an afterthought. You dig latrines, you share them. You do your business quickly because privacy doesn't exist and dignity is not a military concern. Hygiene is whatever you can manage between drills and ditch digging. You'll be filthy more often than not. You'll smell like iron and leather and failure. At night, you lie in your tent. 8 men, crammed in close, each of you trying not to breathe too loudly or move too much. The tents are made of leather, stretched and patched, heavy with rain when it comes, which it often does. You listen to the shifting sounds of others. Coughs, groans, a whisper, the scrape of someone adjusting their sword belt in their sleep. You stare at the roof of the tent and realize this is your life now. You are no longer a man with a home. You are no longer a man with a future that belongs to you. You are a Roman soldier, and Rome does not care how you feel about it. By the time the initial shock of conscription wears off, assuming it ever does, you're already too deep in to get out. You've got your number, you've got your shovel. And you figured out that the army doesn't run on glory. It runs on schedule. Every morning starts the same way. Before the sun even considers rising, a trumpet wails somewhere near the commander's tent, and the whole camp begins to stir like a kicked beehive. You open your eyes to the sound of groaning men, creaking leather, and the soft, wet squelch of someone stepping in, something they definitely hoped wasn't alive. No one speaks much in the morning. There's nothing to say. You get up. You relieve yourself in a trench that was dug a little too close to the sleeping area. You try to brush off the mud from your sandals, knowing full well it's going to find you again within the hour. If it's cold, you shake. If it's hot, you sweat. There's no good weather in the Roman army. There's only weather you haven't been punished in yet. Breakfast is quick, grain porridge, maybe a bit of hard bread, something that once looked like cheese if the supply train hasn't been robbed or spoiled. You eat while standing or crouching or leaning against your tent pole. There's no sitting down unless you've earned it, and even then sitting for too long draws attention. You learn early that being invisible is often safer than being comfortable. Then it begins. Drill. Drill so repetitive that you start to dream in formation. You are expected to move as one, not just with your tent mates, not just with your cohort, but with your entire manipulus, your unit, your tribe now. You hold your shield in your left hand until your shoulder screams. You practice thrusting with your gladius over and over until the movement becomes instinct, until your elbow locks into place at just the right height, until you stop seeing a wooden dummy and start seeing a man. You don't like that realization, but it comes anyway. They teach you to throw the pilum, the Roman javelin, which is heavier than it looks and designed to bend on impact so your enemies can't throw it back. You are told this not for your information, but to remind you that your tools are smarter than you are. If you drop one, you get hit. If you fumble a maneuver, you get hit. If you yawn, you get hit. And if you complain about getting hit, you get hit harder. That's the rhythm of discipline. There is no escape from labor. The Roman army builds as much as it fights. You march all day and dig all night. Every camp must be fortified, no matter how temporary. That means trenches, stakes, walls, watchtowers, if the engineers are feeling ambitious. You learn how to drive posts, how to lash timber, how to clear rocks. You carry logs, you carry sacks, you carry guilt, dread, and the knowledge that even if you do everything perfectly, you still might not live to see retirement. Your body adapts faster than your mind. You stop noticing the bruises, you stop feeling the blisters until they burst. You develop calluses in places you never thought possible. Your feet harden into leathery things that no longer resemble the soft human appendages you once used to chase chickens back home. The ache in your legs becomes a constant hum, like background noise. You walk through pain, eat through exhaustion, think through fatigue. Your body becomes a tool, and tools don't complain. Not out loud. Free time is almost a myth. If you're not drilling, marching, or building, you're on watch, standing guard at the edge of camp, eyes straining into the dark, trying not to fall asleep as the wind cuts through your cloak and into your bones. Falling asleep on duty is not a small mistake. It's a death sentence, if not by execution, then by reputation. No one wants to share a tent with the man who let the enemy slip through. Shame is a currency in the Roman army, and it spends fast. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a break. Not a proper one. Just enough time to sit on a rock, maybe dice with some of the other men, maybe write a letter home if you know how, though there's no guarantee it will ever arrive. You might talk about the next campaign, or the rumors of rebellion, or the food you miss, or the woman you almost married. Sometimes you don't talk at all. Sometimes silence is the only luxury that still feels like your own. There's a hierarchy in everything. The centurion barks orders, the optio enforces them, and everyone below just tries not to attract attention. The punishments are creative: lashes, extra labor, public humiliation. One day you see a man tied to a stake with a sign around his neck. He fell asleep on watch. He'll stand there all day while the rest of you pretend not to look. And the next time you're tired, you'll remember him, and you'll stand a little straighter. Religion helps, or it doesn't. Some men pray to Mars, others to Jupiter, a few to foreign gods picked up in foreign lands. Altars are built, small offerings made, mostly to ward off sickness, injury, or bad luck. You learn not to scoff at it. Not because you believe, necessarily, but because in a place like this, belief is one of the few things no one can punish. And through all of it, through the bruises and the blisters and the endless commands, you start to understand something. It never ends. There is no finish line. There is no moment where someone says, "Good job, you've done enough." There is only the next march, the next drill, the next trench, the next command. You are a cog in something far larger than yourself, a machine that doesn't stop for bad weather, broken bones, or broken spirits. This is your life now. One long grinding stretch of duty, discomfort, and silence. And if you're lucky, very lucky, you'll survive it long enough to call it a memory. No matter how many drills you do, no matter how many hours you spend thrusting at a sack of straw or lifting your shield until your arm shakes, there's still nothing that really prepares you for the first time someone tries to kill you. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, but truly, violently, without hesitation. And when it happens, it doesn't feel like the climax of some noble tale. There's no swelling music, no righteous fury, no carefully choreographed duel beneath storm clouds. What it feels like is a mistake. Like someone somewhere gave the wrong order, and now you're standing in a muddy field with a sword in your hand and your stomach folding in on itself from the sheer biological terror of being about to die. Combat in the Roman army is not elegant, it is not theatrical, it is a system, an assembly line of killing. You are not told to fight, you are told to hold the line, to advance as one, to keep formation. Individuality is a liability. Breaking rank is death. Your shield is not just yours, it is your neighbor's wall. Your weapon is not for flourishes, it is for stabbing again and again, short and quick, underhand, in the gaps between armor, into a man's belly or groin or face, It doesn't matter. What matters is that you don't stop. Your centurion yells commands over the din. You barely hear him, but you know what he wants. You've rehearsed this. You all have. The line moves forward like a wave made of metal and breath and fear. The first clash is deafening. Not just swords and shields, but bodies. The sheer mass of flesh slamming into flesh, men screaming, dying, slipping in the mud, trying to crawl away and getting trampled by the next rank coming up behind them. You are not allowed to pause. If you stop, you fall behind. If you fall behind, you die. You can't see much beyond the man in front of you, just the back of his helmet, the edge of his cloak, and whatever is flailing into your line from the other side. Maybe it's a Germanic tribesman, wild-eyed and covered in furs. Maybe it's a rebel auxiliary who knows these woods better than you know your own street back home. It doesn't matter who it is. You are told not to think of them as people. You are told to think of them as obstacles. If they fall, you step over them. If they swing, you block. If they hesitate, you kill. That's the algorithm. The smell is what stays with you. Sweat, blood, wet leather, churned earth. It hits you like a wall and never leaves. You breathe through your mouth and still it finds a way in. Sometimes a man screams in a way that splits through all the other sounds, high, sharp, and utterly human. And for a moment you remember that this isn't a training exercise. These aren't targets. These are people dying just like you might. And then the moment passes. You stab. You press forward. You survive the minute you're in so that you might survive the next. You don't remember the kills. Not really. You remember flashes. A face too close, an eye popping open just before your blade goes in, a sound like wet cloth tearing. You remember the way your legs shook the first time someone's blood sprayed across your chest. You remember how it made you gag, but there's no time to process it. You are already moving forward, always forward. If you fall and someone notices, you might get dragged back. If they don't, you become part of the ground, trampled, forgotten. One more corpse in the tally no one will admit out loud. The medics come later, maybe, with wine and bandages and prayers to Apollo. If you're too wounded to walk, they might carry you, or they might not. There's always another recruit, always another name on the list. The battle ends not with cheers, but with exhaustion. When the enemy flees or dies or surrenders, your orders don't change. You don't drop your weapon and hug your comrades. You form up. You count heads. You make sure the line is intact. Then you bury the dead, yours if you're lucky, theirs if you're told to. You strip the bodies of anything useful. Sometimes the commanders allow looting, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it happens anyway. And when it's all over, when the sun sets, or the trumpet sounds, or the enemy retreats into the forest, you sit down. Not in celebration, in silence. You don't talk about it, you don't replay the moments out loud, you just sit, staring at the dirt, the blood on your boots, the knuckles of your hand still clenched too tightly around the hilt of your sword. If you're wounded, you're tended to. If you're not, you dig, because the next camp still needs to be built. The army doesn't rest. The army reorganizes. You eat whatever food is left. You try to sleep, but you dream of running, not away, not toward, just running endlessly through a field that's always wet and always dark and always full of the sound of footsteps behind you. And maybe you live. Maybe you make it through that day and the next and the next. Maybe you start to feel pride, or maybe you feel nothing at all. Some men harden, some crack, some become eerily calm, like they've made a quiet deal with death. Not today, not yet. But the deal has an expiration date. You just hope it's not soon. What no one tells you is that surviving battle isn't the hardest part. It's what comes after, the numbness, the waiting, the knowledge that it will happen again and again and again until your time is up, or your body is broken, or the empire decides you've finally done enough. But they rarely do. There's a moment, sometime after your first real battle, sometime after you've buried the first friend whose name you can't say out loud without your throat tightening, when you realize that this isn't a phase, it's not a brief tour, it's not a single glorious war that ends with a return parade and a laurel crown. It's a job, a long, slow, dragging job with no weekends, no holidays, no finish line in sight. The campaigns don't end. They just shift direction. Your commander gets new orders. Maybe the Senate back in Rome decided there's another frontier to secure. Or maybe a provincial governor wrote a long scroll full of exaggerated threats and paranoid scribbles about barbarian incursions. Whatever the reason, you march again. You're always marching. Through dust, through rain, through snow, through forests so dense you can't see the sky, and deserts so wide you forget what color grass used to be. The empire stretches in every direction, and your legs are the reason it stays stretched. Every step takes you farther from home. If you still think about home, most men stop. It's easier. You lose track of the seasons. Not because there aren't seasons out here, there are, but because they blur together. Hot becomes cold, becomes wet, becomes dry, and then it starts again. The only calendar you follow is the one of duties: build, march, fight, patrol, dig, repeat. Your world shrinks to a series of tasks and the distance between your boots and the man ahead of you. Sometimes the campaign is active. You engage the enemy. You take towns, burn granaries, surround villages, and deal with whatever version of resistance lives out here. Other times it's nothing. Long weeks of walking and waiting and hearing rumors from merchants or scouts about movements that never materialize. It's like chasing ghosts. You sleep in half-constructed forts and drafty watchtowers, wake to alarms that turn out to be wild dogs or terrified shepherds, and train constantly in case the next hill brings contact. But mostly it doesn't. Instead, you build. Rome's favorite kind of conquest wasn't always with the sword. It was with roads, with walls, with fortified camps and straight paths cut through landscapes that had been crooked and wild since the beginning of time. And so, with your back aching and your hands raw, you help pave civilization into existence. You set stones, you hammer stakes, you raise palisades, dig ditches, level ground, and build bridges over rivers you don't know the names of. Sometimes you pause to admire the view, not because it's beautiful, but because it's high ground and someone told you to secure it. And it goes on. Months bleed into years. You are sent to different provinces: Gaul, Dacia, Syria, Britannia. The names start to lose meaning. Each new land brings different terrain, different enemies, different food that your stomach doesn't trust. The languages change, the climate changes, but the orders stay the same. Advance, establishment, hold. The faces around you change too. The man who slept beside you your first year is gone, killed, transferred. Maybe he ran, maybe he just vanished into the night, never to be seen again. You don't ask, you don't dwell. New men arrive. Nervous, young, confused. You recognize their expressions. You used to wear the same one. You stop trying to remember their names until they've survived a winter. Sometimes there are rewards. If your legion takes a city or wins a decisive battle, you might be given part of the spoils: a little silver, a chunk of land, a necklace torn from someone else's throat. You learn quickly not to ask where things came from. Loot passes from hand to hand until it forgets who it belonged to. You take what you're given, clean it if necessary, and tuck it into your pack. It's yours now. You might be stationed in a town. It's not a real town, More like an outpost with a bathhouse, a market, and a tavern where the wine is bad and the locals look at you like a wild animal behind a gate. Some soldiers find comfort there. They take lovers, raise children, try to live like people again. Others can't. They sleep in their armor, eat alone, and stare at the horizon like it owes them something. You stop judging. Everyone finds their own way to carry the weight. When a campaign finally ends, it rarely feels like an ending. There's no ceremony, no clear declaration that it's over. One morning, the orders simply change. March here, garrison that, patrol this. You start moving in a new direction, and you realize there's always another border, another rebellion, another distant territory where Rome's light hasn't yet reached, or is beginning to flicker. The legions are mobile. Your home is not a place, it's a unit. Your loyalty is not to a village or a family, but to the eagle, the symbol of Rome's authority, carried into every battle, planted in every camp, guarded like it's alive. And in a way, it is, because wherever that standard goes, you follow, whether you want to or not. And beneath it all, beneath the rituals, the marches, the patrols, the endless repetitions of conquest and construction, is the quiet realization that Rome doesn't really care about you. It needs you. It uses you. It might even reward you, if you live long enough. But it does not care. You are one among tens of thousands. If you die tomorrow, someone else will step into your place before your body cools. And still you march. You're told you serve Rome, that's the phrase, for Rome. As if it's a mother, as if it's a home, as if it knows who you are and wants good things for you. But Rome is not a person. Rome is a structure, a system, a machine so large that it doesn't even notice you unless you break. And even then, only because someone has to clean up the mess. At first, they made it sound like a good deal. 25 years of service, 20 if you're lucky, or if the emperor feels generous, which, spoiler, he won't. And at the end, there would be rewards. A plot of land, a small pension, a diploma, not the parchment kind, but a military discharge certificate stamped in bronze with your name etched on it like a receipt. If you weren't a citizen when you joined, you'd become one after. That alone was supposed to be worth the blood and the waiting. You'd be Roman. Officially, you'd matter. But none of that is guaranteed. The land you're promised might be in some forgotten province you've never seen. It might be infertile, flood-prone, or already claimed by someone else who doesn't feel like moving. The pension might arrive years late, if at all. Some clerks lose the paperwork. Some governors decide your file doesn't matter. And if you try to appeal, good luck finding someone who speaks your dialect, cares about your scars, or has the patience to read a letter from a half-literate ex-legionary. Your pay, when it comes, is technically regular. 3 times a year unless delays happen, which they always do. You get a modest stipend, a few denarii, enough to keep you clothed and barely fed, but most of it vanishes before you ever touch it. Deductions are made for food, for equipment maintenance, for the cloak they gave you that doesn't really keep out the rain, for the tent that leaks, for the replacement sword you needed after your last one snapped in a skirmish no one talks about. And then there are the bribes. They don't call them bribes, of course. But when the quartermaster forgets your boot rations or hands you a shield with a split in it and tells you he might be able to find a better one for a little something extra, it's hard to feel like you're being protected by the system. You learn to save a few coins. You learn to hide them well. Not under your bedroll. Too obvious. Inside the seams of your belt, maybe. Or sewn into your cloak lining. You hoard what you can, not because you're greedy, but because you understand. No one's looking out for you but you. If you get injured, there's treatment. Sort of. The army has medics. Some trained, some just very experienced with wounds that bleed a lot. You might get stitched up, wrapped, cauterized if things go badly. You might be back on your feet in a week. Or you might be discharged as useless, sent limping away with a half-filled scroll of recommendations that no one ever reads. There's no long-term care, no pensions for chronic pain. If your hand doesn't close right anymore, you learn to eat with the other one. If your leg drags, you learn to walk slower. And if you can't keep up, well, the army's not short on replacements. You're allowed to marry, eventually. Not at first. In the early years of your service, soldiers weren't permitted to take legal wives. You could take a partner unofficially, maybe start a family if you were stationed somewhere long enough, but the children wouldn't be recognized. The woman wouldn't have any protection. You were a ghost, a man with no personal existence beyond your service. Later, the rules changed, softened, but by then, for many men, it was too late. The years had gone, the body had changed, the road home was too far, too abstract to imagine. And when you die, and you will, there's a system for that too. If your unit survives the campaign, they might bury you if there's time, if the weather allows, if the ground isn't too frozen or the enemy isn't too close. A quick grave, a carved stone, if someone likes you enough. Maybe your name gets added to a record. Maybe not. If you die anonymously in a skirmish that doesn't make the report, you become part of the dust, part of the soil under the next outpost. One more ghost among the thousands Rome left behind. You hear rumors of veterans' colonies, places where old soldiers go to farm, drink, and tell stories about how they almost died in Illyricum or Judea or Thrace. You imagine them sometimes. You imagine yourself there. Sitting in the sun with knees that don't ache, children who look like you, a wife who doesn't flinch when you wake up yelling in the middle of the night. But it's always just that, an image, distant, flickering, like a story told around a campfire that no one entirely believes, even while they're telling it. Because the truth is, for most of you, Rome isn't a homeland. It isn't a mother. It isn't even a place you'll ever see. Rome is orders shouted through the cold. Rome is silence when your friend doesn't get back up. Rome is the weight of your pack and the smell of old blood in your boots. And when they say, for Rome, what they mean is, you are for Rome. Your time, your body, your will. Rome doesn't give. Rome takes. And you march because you must, because the alternative is worse, because there is no choice left anymore, only duty. And you tell yourself, maybe one day, when this is all over, you'll stand on your own land again, dig your hands into clean dirt, and sleep under a roof that doesn't move. But that day always feels just a little farther down the road. Just beyond the next campaign, just past the next winter, just after the next battle, you survive by accident more than skill. It's a quiet kind of cruelty. Not the kind that cuts, the kind that waits. At some point, not marked by a particular season, not tied to a specific battle or moment, but somewhere deep in the long grey hallway of years, you stop thinking of yourself as a man who used to be something else. You stop being the farmer or the blacksmith's son or the boy who once chased chickens down dusty alleys and dreamed of nothing larger than a warm fire and a roof that didn't leak. That version of you fades, softens, slips between the cracks of all the days you don't remember clearly anymore. You become a soldier, or more accurately, you become the shape the army has carved out of you, a body that marches, a mind that doesn't ask. It isn't a dramatic transformation, it's slow, erosion, not collapse. The kind of change you only notice in retrospect, like a scar you forgot was healing. First, you stop writing letters home because they take too long to arrive, or they never arrive at all. Then you stop saying your hometown out loud because no one else here is from there, and it starts to sound like a word that doesn't belong to you anymore. Eventually, you stop picturing it. The faces of your family blur. The layout of your street gets rearranged by time. Memory becomes fiction. What replaces it isn't better. It's just quieter. You know when to speak and when not to. You know how to pack your gear so it doesn't jostle, how to tie your sandals so they won't unravel, how to keep your shield clean and your sword oiled even if you haven't used it in weeks. You know the smell of mildew on canvas, the exact sound a shovel makes in rocky ground, and the way your spine stiffens when you hear the centurion's footsteps behind you. You know the names of rivers no civilian has ever seen, the taste of water boiled 3 times to make it drinkable, and the color the sky turns just before snow begins to fall in a foreign land that does not want you there. Some nights you lie awake in your cloak, staring at the roof of the tent or the wide open sky, depending on how lucky you've been, and you wonder what it's all for. You don't ask out loud. That would be dangerous, and worse, embarrassing. But inside your head, the question curls and unrolls like smoke. Why am I still here? What is all this building and bleeding and waiting for? You don't believe in the empire the way they say you're supposed to. You've never even seen Rome. And if you did, what would it mean? A statue? A forum full of men in clean robes who've never marched a mile in their lives? Sometimes you catch yourself wishing for peace. Not the grand, historic kind that gets etched into stone, but the small, unglamorous kind, a morning without orders, a meal that isn't grain, a conversation that doesn't feel like a calculation. But then you remind yourself that peace doesn't know what to do with men like you. You've been shaped by war. You sleep light, eat fast, trust slowly, and flinch at sudden noises. What would you do with peace? Sit quietly on your little patch of land, listening to the wind and wondering why no one's yelling at you? You're not sure that's peace. That might just be waiting to die. There are older soldiers in the unit, men in their 40s, maybe older, if they've been especially careful or especially lucky. You watch them sometimes, how they move slower, how they don't speak unless spoken to, how they stare a little too long at the fire after dark. They don't tell stories. They don't give advice. They're like statues that haven't crumbled yet. You wonder if that's your future. You wonder if you'll make it that far. You've seen things you don't talk about. Not out of secrecy, but out of practicality. There's no place to put them. The man who bled out in your arms calling for a mother you know was dead. The child who stared at your unit from the edge of the trees, unmoving, unreadable, while the village behind her burned. The screams that came from behind the tents the night the officers got drunk and no one wanted to be the one to stop them. These are not things you write down. They just settle in your bones, and sometimes they surface, usually when you're too tired to push them down. You used to dream, now you mostly just sleep. Dreaming takes energy. It invites hope. And hope has no place out here. Hope is the thing you're told to have just before a suicidal charge. Hope is the illusion they feed you when they talk about rewards and retirement and the glory of service. But glory doesn't feel like this. Glory isn't marching through mud so thick it eats your boots. Glory isn't watching your friend cough blood for 2 days before dying in a camp hospital that smells like vinegar and defeat. Glory isn't cold steel and wet cloaks and silence after the storm. And yet you go on, because going on is easier than stopping, because the body keeps marching long after the spirit sits down, because there's always another border, another wall to raise, another hill to climb, another river to cross, because someone will always say move, and you've learned how to move, because the one thing the Roman army teaches better than killing is persistence. You are tired, in your body, in your voice, in the deep, private place where identity used to live. You don't know who you'll be when this ends. You suspect you won't like him, but you'll still be him. A shadow of a soldier, a man-shaped tool that once held a name. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. So you roll over. You pull your cloak tighter. You close your eyes against the dark. And you listen to the quiet chorus of 100 other tired men breathing in time, like waves against a forgotten shore. The boots hit the ground one after the other. It's automatic now. You don't think about it. Left, then right, then left again. Not because anyone's shouting anymore. They stopped shouting hours ago, maybe days. You're just walking because you've always been walking, because that's what soldiers do in Rome's army. They march through snow, through mud, through grass that brushes against your knees and tries to whisper things you're too tired to hear, through villages that pretend not to see you, through lands that don't want you, through the map, slowly filling in with red. You don't know where you're going, not really. Someone ahead of you holds the orders. Someone above you signed them. All you know is that you're part of a column now, a line that stretches forward through the dusk and backward into memory. You can't see the front, you don't look back, there's no point, no one's back there anymore. You don't know where you're going, not really. Someone ahead of you holds the orders, someone above you signed them. All you know is that you're part of a column now, a line that stretches forward through the dusk and backward into memory. You can't see the front, you don't look back, there's no point, no one's back there anymore. Your pack is heavy but not unbearable. The weight has become part of you. The creak of the leather straps, the dull ache in your shoulders, the slow burn in your lower back. These are just your body now. Your gear rattles softly as you move. Sword, cloak, water skin, bits of bread tucked into a pouch, a small token from someone you used to know, a carved piece of bone, a folded scrap of cloth. You don't remember why you keep it. You just do. The sun is setting behind the hills, or maybe it's rising. The sky turns that washed-out shade of color you can't name, and no one bothers to comment on it. Beauty fades fast out here. You learned that after your first spring in the field. The flowers bloomed for a few days, and then they were crushed under boots, burned in campfires, trampled by mules. There's no room for decoration in conquest. Even the prettiest things get used up. You think about stopping. Just for a moment, just to breathe, but the line keeps moving, and breaking it means drawing attention, and attention means questions, and questions mean explanations. So you keep your eyes on the man ahead of you, watch the rhythm of his steps, try to match him perfectly. It's easier than thinking. The mind quiets when the body has a job. There's a kind of peace in it. A dull, repetitive calm. March long enough and the noise in your head starts to fade. You stop wondering who you might have been. You stop asking what would have happened if you'd run when they called your name. You stop imagining other lives. There's only this one now, one foot after the other. The feel of the road under your soles, the long, slow heartbeat of history grinding forward with your muscles as fuel. The stars are coming out. You see them through the gaps in the trees. Sharp little sparks in the cold, dark sky. You wonder if they look the same over Rome. You wonder if Rome even notices you're out here. If somewhere, back in the marble forums and wine-slick villas, someone is sitting comfortably while you sink ankle-deep into the damp of another nameless province. Probably. But the thought doesn't bring rage, just a kind of soft, distant acceptance. Your cohort settles into a familiar rhythm. Breathing sinks, boots land in unison. The sound becomes a lullaby, low, steady, hypnotic. You feel yourself drifting in the movement, not asleep but not fully awake either. Just moving, just existing, just one more soldier on one more road in a world built from conquest and silence. And maybe that's how it ends. Not with a battle, not with a wound, not with a ceremony. just with you walking through the twilight, surrounded by men who look like ghosts in their helmets and cloaks, each of you fading gently into the landscape, each of you part of a story no one will write down. There will be no music, no last words, just the sound of footsteps continuing into the dark like the slow ticking of a clock that forgot what it was counting toward. So close your eyes now if they're still open. Let the weight slip from your shoulders, even if only in your mind. Feel the ground beneath you, solid and steady. The march continues, but for now, you're allowed to rest. Sleep comes easy for a Roman soldier, especially the ones who never made it home.